Well, hello and welcome. We've got another Plan Your Way to Wealth live broadcast here today. It's Friday, the 1st of July, first day of the brand new financial year. Tax time as well. All right, so obviously everyone put together your stuff and get to see a good tax accountant. Get your tax return lodged and get your refund as soon as possible. But more importantly than being the first day of the brand new financial year, it is also election eve. So after the longest election campaign in history, we're now down to the night before the election. And as those of you that have been tuning in have been aware, that primarily what I've been covering in these live broadcasts over the past few weeks is talking about, one of the largest election issues, which is negative gearing and how that's going to play out and how that's going to impact, everyday hardworking Australians, how it's going to impact people that currently own a home, how it's going to impact young Australians looking to get into home ownership, how it's going to impact, everyday people wanting to build wealth, create wealth, and actually have the being able to retire when at some point in life, rather than staying in a job and nowadays retirement age 70 years of age, working your guts out till the age of 70. Bring up some statistics that we've talked about in past broadcasts. We talked about how almost half of baby boomers expect to have to work into their 70s, and almost a quarter of baby boomers are expecting to work into their 80s. So this is a pretty big issue. And really what we've got today is we just want to wrap up the last, this is the fourth part in a 4-part series where we've been talking about negative gearing, really separating the facts from the fiction out there, and really actually looking at the arguments that both parties have been proposing around this issue, negative gearing, and seeing how it really stacks up when we check the facts and figures. Couple of things before we get into it, and I want to kind of recap some of the points that we've had and we've looked over. But before we get started on those things, first and foremost, if you're watching this live broadcast, one of the things that you want to do is get onto the Infinite Wealth Facebook page and make sure you like us so you can stay up to date with all industry information, updates, what's happening, what current offers we've got going. Incredible resource, particularly if you're someone that is interested in having your money work for you and building an asset base and achieving financial security. You can obviously click on the Facebook page. You can also, if you hover over the like button, you can select to see our notifications first. That way Facebook will show you all the notifications that come up from our Facebook page, and you won't just get to see one out of every 20. Also, live broadcast notifications. These broadcasts have been extraordinarily popular over the last few weeks. We've had, it's something like, we're getting up close to around about 50,000 viewers just in the past few weeks. So if you want to make sure that you get the opportunity to see the live broadcasts that are coming up, if you look up in this top little corner, I believe there's a button that you can press there, and that'll allow you to subscribe to the notification. So whenever we have a live broadcast, you can make sure you can clue in. And one of the reasons why we've got these live broadcasts primarily is to answer your questions. I have people messaging me, contacting me, emailing me every day, asking questions about whether it be about their tax, whether it be about their debt, whether it be about investing, whether it be about building assets, things that they're currently looking at, getting my insight, my opinion. Obviously, we want to keep you up to date with all the late breaking news as well in that kind of world. But we really wanted to service our clients just like you. So that way, if you click the live notifications, you can stay up to date and obviously tune in to everything that we're going to be covering. But let's get back to the topic at hand, which is, the 4 things that no one wants to tell you about negative gearing. Major election issue. There's been a lot of talk about it from all parties, the Greens as well as Labor, as well as Liberal. Liberal want to leave negative gearing as it is. They also want to leave the capital gains deduction as it is. Labor are proposing to abolish negative gearing on established properties, only have it on new properties moving forward, and also reduce the capital gains discount down to 25%. Greens are pretty much on board with that as well. So, like I said, there's been a lot of commentary, and one of the things that I've really noticed is there's also been a lot of passion around this particular debate as well. So, people Some people are asking questions and want to find out more. Some people have pretty passionate views on where they stand about this particular issue. The four things that we've been covering over the past few weeks, where we started was this, and that was around about the principle of negative gearing. And making sure that people understood the principle, exactly what it means, and also understood that every working Australian has the opportunity to take advantage of the same principle that property investors use with negative gearing, and how abolishing negative gearing just doesn't make sense, particularly being that other people are able to do that. So what am I talking about there? So as an example, if you are a wage earner, you go to work, you work your 40 hours a week, you get your 60, 70, 80 grand a year, whatever it is. Like if you're spending money to generate an income, and obviously there's specific rules and regulations from the tax office about how to do that, but a simple one is if you're using your car for work to generate an income, then you're allowed to claim those car expenses as a tax deduction, meaning that that money that you're spending to generate an income, you can deduct on tax, okay? This is the exact same thing that property investors do. So if an ordinary wage earner is able to do it, why wouldn't we let a property investor do it? Same applies to a business. If you're someone who's self-employed, or you own a business, or you are a company, once again, you spend money to generate an income, i.e. if you're a business and you spend money on business equipment, or you spend money on staff, or you spend money on marketing, then once again, you can also deduct that off your taxable income, net profit, and not have to pay tax on that particular money. So companies can do it, businesses can do it, wage earners can do it. What Labor is saying is that property investors shouldn't be able to do it. So once again, that principle just clearly doesn't make sense. The arguments, of course, that they're putting forward for why property investors shouldn't be able to negative gear is they're blaming the property investors for housing affordability issues. We went into great detail about how, in fact, if we compare it to the late 80s, that housing is much more affordable than what it was back in the late 80s. Currently, right now, an average income earner puts 31% of their income towards a mortgage, whereas back in the late 80s, it was 43%. So, in fact, housing affordability, once again, that argument about housing affordability doesn't add up. What about for young Australians wanting to get into their first home? Well, abolishing negative gearing is not going to change that. Abolishing negative gearing, the principle behind why they believe that'll impact housing affordability is primarily what it's going to see is a drop in house prices. So, 2/3 of households out there are either owned outright or are being purchased through a bank. So they're homeowners. 2/3 of the households out there are homeowners. What they want to do is bring in a policy that is going to drop the value of the largest asset that most people own. That's incredibly dangerous, if you ask me. And then let's say if it drops at 10%, well, is it going to make it easier for young Australians to get into the housing market? Well, the big barrier for young Australians getting into the housing market is not the price of houses. It is not the mortgages, as we've just talked about in the housing affordability. The problem is coming up with a deposit that they need to buy a house. Now, if you're going to be able to get into a house with a 5% deposit, well, if it's a $500,000 house, you're talking 25 grand. If house prices drop by 10% to 450, well, the deposit that's required only drops by 10% as well, which is to $22,500. So whether a first homeowner has to come up with $22,500 or $25,000, there's really not that much difference. It's not going to have a major impact on young Australians being able to get into the housing market. The third thing that we talked about is where the government should be looking, if what they're out to do, because the other argument for the abolition of negative gearing is to raise tax revenue. We're in a budget deficit, a huge budget deficit. The government wants to bring the budget back to surplus. They need to be basically raising extra revenue. Well, we talked about negative gearing, how 2/3 of people that negative gear earn under $80,000. So this is going to affect more average everyday Australians earning under $80,000 than it's going to impact the high net worth or the rich people. And we talked about how if the government is serious about raising their tax revenue, then what they need to do is they need to target corporate tax avoidance. We talked about the different mechanisms that companies use to funnel money out of Australia and avoid paying tax. We also noticed that corporate tax avoidance costs Australia $5.5 billion every single year, and that would be enough to fund all the spending cuts the government has made over the past two budgets and with $2 billion left over. So rather than Labor, rather than going after the little guy to fund the deficit that we're in and put us back in surplus, how about we go after those big companies that are paying, some of them paying less than 1% tax, some of them paying no tax. You know, we talked about the almost 600 companies on an ATO report that was released late last year that have a revenue of over $100 million and paid $0 tax for the 2014 financial year, which I think is absolutely disgusting. So we're now up to point number 4. What is this last thing that I want to talk about with negative gearing? And this is the thing that I'm most passionate about. You know, the reason why I have this business, the reason why, you know, I've traveled the world and traveled through Australia, you know, leading workshops to over 10,000 people, teaching them how to reach their financial goals, is because I believe that every Australian has the right to financial security and potentially even live a life of financial freedom. Now, what ways have Australians got to do that? So if we look at it, you pretty much got two options. You leave school, maybe you go to university, maybe you get a trade, whatever it is. But you can either do one of two things. You can either go and get a job, or you can either start a business. Okay, now if you go and get a job, I mean, the way that possibly that you would be banking on to fund your retirement is through superannuation. Well, you know, superannuation, it was created and implemented in the early 90s because the Australian government knew that it wasn't going to be able to afford to pay the pension for all the baby boomers. So a couple of quick breakdowns about baby boomers, because I know we know the term, but a lot of people don't really understand what it is. Essentially, baby boomers started here. 1945, everyone got back from the war and they were really happy to see each other. We had a population explosion. Now, as of 2011, that was the first year that those baby boomers were hitting retirement age. Between 2011 and 2021, 4 million Australians are hit retirement age. And if we take 4 million Australians out of the workforce, that's almost a third of our workforce. That's seriously damaging to tax revenue, hence why the government doesn't have the money to keep paying the pension. This is why we've seen the pension, the retirement age pushed back. This is also why we've seen things like not major increases in the actual amount of the pension, and why we've seen major changes towards superannuation. Superannuation, it's not working. If we look at, apart from the last 12 months, if we look between the years of 2008 and 2014, over a 6-year period, 60% of superannuation funds in Australia went backwards. That means that money that your business, or so the company that you work for, is paying, you know, to put your nest egg away for retirement, they actually would have been better off giving it to you and you putting it under your pillow. At least you would have had the same money at the end of the day. But no, that's not what's happening. Superannuation is not working. So what's the other option that we've got? Well, the other option that we've got is we've got start our own business. Well, okay, let's have a look at the statistics on that. If we look at ASIC, what they tell us is this, is that within the first 3 years, 50% of businesses and companies that are registered become unregistered. In other words, 50% of businesses fail inside the first 3 years. That is a highly risky investment. You know, and it's got to serve individuals as well. I mean, some people simply don't have the money to be able to go into business. They don't have the flexibility because of their personal circumstances, whether it means family. You know, some people just aren't, you know, wired for that kind of risk or for that kind of output. I mean, owning your own business, you know, it's great being your own boss, but anyone out there that owns their own business knows that, you know, owning your own business is pretty much like having a job. The only difference is you have to work harder. So business is not going into business is not well, it's certainly not a safe, you know, 50% of them fail. It's certainly not a safe alternative. You know, yeah, people could look at, if not investing in superannuation, investing in something along the lines of shares. You know, once again, performance we pretty much see is almost the same as superannuation. So really it doesn't make any difference there. You know, the amount of money that people would have to save over a period of time to have a significant investment to get significant returns, you know, it leaves you in no different situation rather than superannuation. What it has left most everyday average Australians is it's left them with property investment. Property investment, you know, 2 million people in Australia invest in property. People like the ability to leverage your money that property investment provides. They like the tangible bricks and mortar, safe kind of investment. If Labor abolishes negative gearing, then like this is an out and out attack on the everyday Australian's ability to build their wealth and get ahead in life. we're going to have so many more people being sentenced to living a life where they have to work their guts out until their day they die. And I'm just not okay with that. I think we need to be having a more level playing field where people have the opportunity, if they so desire, to go and create wealth and build their nest egg and have a way out of, the 40-hour-a-week slog that most people do for their entire lives. So, this is for me the single most important principle and the single most important point that why we should not be abolishing negative gearing. Otherwise, what options have people got for financial security? It's just not right, if you ask me. It doesn't make any sense when you look at the principle of negative gearing. It's not going to impact, the arguments about housing affordability. It's not going to make any difference to housing affordability. In fact, what the independent research has shown is that we're going to see rents increase. It's actually going to make it harder for the everyday, ordinary, average, hardworking Australian that wants to get ahead in life. They should not be focusing on negative gearing, because 66% of people that negative gear earn under $80,000. If they're serious about boosting the coffers, then they need to go after the corporate tax avoidance and stop attacking the everyday average Joe. And I think it's only fair that people have the ability, if they so desire, if they so want to, if they're ambitious enough, then they can create their own wealth. So that, for me, really covers all the important points regarding negative gearing. For me, it's absolutely clear that this is poor policy, and in fact, you look at the betting polls right now. Like Labor are a very, very long shot. They're paying $8 at the bookies, whereas the coalition's currently paying $1.08. So and I think what this really represented was Labor knew that they were going to have to throw a Hail Mary pass. They knew that they were going to have to pull a rabbit out of their hat if they wanted to be able to, to make up some ground and potentially even win this election. And I believe that they're choosing to go after negative gearing was a mistake, and a mistake that potentially could have had serious implications on a large number of the general population of Australia. I think, once again, I'm not a Labor or Liberal guy. I don't really have an allegiance to any particular party. I like to make my decisions based on policies rather than which way I particularly lead. But after all this, I think this is absolutely clear that this, once again, is just another demonstration of Labor's poor economic policy, and really, puts a lot of people's livelihoods and futures at risk. So I'll definitely be putting Labor and the Greens, way down on my preferences tomorrow. Obviously, everyone out there, I recommend that you don't waste your vote, regardless of whether you agree with me or disagree with me. This is democracy in action. It doesn't work if you waste your vote. Every vote does count, and it's your only way to get a say in the running of this country. So I do implore you and applaud you to get out there and have your vote be counted and have your voice be heard. Before we finish up, just really want to thank people for tuning in and paying attention over the last 3 or 4 weeks as we've been covering this issue around negative gearing. The feedback that we've been getting about these broadcasts has been absolutely fantastic. So I'm going to be continuing doing stuff like this. Most importantly, if there is anything that you want me to speak about, like if there's any questions that you have, queries, things you don't understand, things you heard, please feel free to drop us a line, whether you can comment on this post or send us a message to the Facebook page, and I'll make sure that I cover as many of your questions as possible. I want to have these broadcasts be as valuable to you as possible, and as in reciprocation for the fact that you're giving me your time and your attention. So it's very much appreciated. Please enjoy what's left of your Friday afternoon. I hope everyone has a great weekend. Obviously, we'll be pretty keen to see the result that's going to come out of Saturday's election, and I look forward to speaking to you in the very near future. Have a great day, guys. See you later.